all, welcome to another episode of geekJUDGE. We had very good viewership and we got a lot of questions for the geekJUDGE previous episode, and we hope that this is entertaining you and also educating you. With that said, we'll go into this week's episode 4 of geekJUDGE. And again, I have my friend Bala Subra with me. Bala, let's start with your top 3 things that was bothering your mind, or you've been thinking about for last week.
Thank you, Dinesh. Welcome, folks. 3 things. I'm going to be classic over here. I'm going to go back to history. So the first thing is security. The 4 biggest folks are entering LLM security. We know security had been there forever and ever, from the before common era, but now this is the new security for the AI era. So we need to talk in deep about how all the big players are entering, and what do they mean by LLM protection, what do they mean by agent monitoring, AI governance, and prompt attack injection, so on. But the biggest news is it's getting the necessary visibility, and big players are here to stay. The second thing is, once again, a very classic thing, the platform engineering shift. What do I mean by that is there are 2 layers to it. So I will stick to the top 3 since you said both of them are closely related. Kubernetes had been there for quite some time, and we had all been as a developer, in the sense, I've been abstracting away my deployment problems to somebody else. Similarly, AI deployment had been the operating systems team's responsibility. That is getting taken care of by Kubernetes, and how that has come into play has changed the game right now, because the hardware underneath is getting expired right after you bought it. Like, in sense, it's a ticking time bomb. Like 8.6 months, it's useless. You have to once again refurbish the hardware and change everything back. That's one part of the problem, and Kubernetes is the other part of the problem, in which people want hungrier, people want bigger, better machines for 1000x growth with AI. When API came, we had 10x. Now think about 100 times more growth, 1000x. So those are some of the big themes that I was thinking this week. What about you? Well, what are the top 5, top 3?
No, fantastic, Bala. Shows your experience why you're going back to the basics. Security and scaling, all these things are very important, right? So I think we should definitely do separate episodes on these things. The top 3 things on my mind is mostly all fancy stuffs, right? So first thing is everyone's mind has these things. The IPO fever, right? Now that A is not going to be just a private company, it's not going to be a private enterprise. IPO, they are entering into the IPO market. We talked about Anthropic trying to be a secretive, filing a secretive IPO, but Mr. Musk, he has a obsession to become first on everything. So I think that he was the first AI company to go public. So he took Grok public, right, with a $1.75 trillion market cap. So we're going to talk about that later, and why he took it, what is behind the valuation, and all those kind of stuff. And then we also have OpenAI quickly going to follow with their IPO as well, and Anthropic is already there. So these 3 companies, and along with the farm companies or the mom companies, we have a lot of capitalization that is going to get invested in AI. So let's talk about that one. So, but that's something I've been thinking about. The second thing, very interesting thing that I'd seen is we talk about autonomous agency, based agentic AIs and everything. So there is a company in AI which ran a simulated town. They call it the World. It's a company called Emergence World. The Emergence AI. They ran an experiment called World, where they pitched 4 different models of LLM to run a town by themselves, and what the results are. So the results are really quite amazing, and the experimentation setup by itself is very good. Why I like this one is we talk about we are still in the age of narrow AI, when we go to the the next advantage generative AI kind of areas, the simulated town is kind of an experimentation to show that are we ready for that? Is AI there? So we'll talk about that one, but that is something kind of a social experiment that I would definitely like to watch. The third one is again the ban, right? The US is banning the Anthropic's latest models. So Mythos, that is coming from Anthropic, they've been talking about that for quite some time, and then they released a dumbed down or a guardrailed version called Fable, right? So both of them are banned right now, and they are restricted to US users. And the US government has told that there should be additional guardrails to be placed before launching. So those are the three things I like to talk about today, and those are the three things and big things on my mind. So with that said, let's get into the first topic that I talked about, and then let's weave in I think a lot of these things has commonality with what you talked about, especially on security, and especially when you go to the simulated town, we'll talk about a little bit about tech security as well. So let's talk about Grok, right? So Grok.
Or
Um,
SpaceX for that matter, you know. Yeah, I don't know what was the official name over there because he has like 100 companies, XAI, so on, so on. I still call it Twitter though.
so yeah, that's a very good question, right? So that's a lot of people are confused. So he launched SpaceX, right? So SpaceX is $1.75 trillion company. The symbol is SPCX, right? But what is inside it is what is important, right? So about the valuation of Twitter is included in that. The valuation of XAA, which is Grok, which is inside in that. But each of them are valued at different pieces because he has got valuation, or they got funding for each of these individuals, right? And then he amalgamated everything and launched it. The biggest chunk within SpaceX is the Starlink, right? Which is which is most right now revenue generating for them, launching spaceships and everything. That is a major chunk of it. So if you think about is all the 1.75 trillion dollars is what he launched, was it all AI? Probably not, but it is all AI powered because most of the SpaceX technologies is AI. And then the XAI part of it, and the Twitter part of the X, and everything which is which is the rest of it, right? Out of the 1.2 trillion, the remaining 650 billion or 700 billion is what he's valuing XAI, Grok, everything. So XAI includes Grok, XAI includes Twitter, which used to be X. So that's how the valuation stands, right? So the stock was priced at $135 at launch. It was supposed to collect close to like $1.75 trillion, but as expected, the stock went about like 25% on the day of the launch. That made it like right now it is a $2.2 trillion company, right? That makes like Elon Musk the most richest person, and everyone the plumber who worked on it, he's a multi-millionaire right now. So that's the story. So let me pause a little bit. Do you have any questions before we further go into what is this implication of these IPOs?
My biggest question is this company is losing $5 billion a year. Why are you so excited about this? Is it like a dot-com boom in which I saw, AOL, other companies getting acquired by legacy media, and then they split it off, and then it went private, so on and so forth. We know 100 stories like that from dot-com. So this is like $5 billion. That's a lot of money losing. Is it just Elon Musk aura that we are paying, like the Pied Piper?
That's a very, very good question. That's where we are going to go into, right? It's not. You've been I think kind enough, right? 5 billion is a very low number. So there's a range. They say that he's spending anywhere between 5 to 10 billion, even $15 billion on XAI. But you have to go back to the examples, right? You take to the examples of Amazon's or Google when before they went, they were not completely profitable. They had to spend a lot of money. And I think 2 years back, where Meta, which is already a publicly traded company, he was spending on his virtual reality labs, spending close to 10 to 15 billion. That's like 2 years back, right? So all these companies need to spend that money to build out the compute and build out the features to deliver to the public. But in spite of that, what people usually look at it, I don't know whether it's short-sighted or if it is long-sighted, they know things that we don't know, is that people always focus on how much revenue they are making. So in terms of revenue, Elon's SpaceX or XA and Tesla, though together, they are making profit, right? So let's take Tesla away from it. But if you think about it, just SpaceX, right? They are making close to 20 plus billion in revenue. Same thing about Anthropic. We talked about they are a run rate of around 47 billion revenue, right? So the way the valuation works is they look at the revenue and see how much X is your market capitalization. So if you think about SpaceX, to your point, yeah, they are heavily modeled in such a way that the future projection. Again, they are looking at Tesla. Currently, they are getting close to $20 billion, and then it is the biggest IPO. But if you think about the multiplication factor, it's in hundreds, right? Because 187 billion, 18 to 20 billion to now it is 2.2 trillion, means we are, you are valuing SpaceX is valued at 100 times compared to Anthropic, which has 47 billion. They're going to 1 trillion, right? They are valued only at 25x, right? So if you think about just that multiplication factor, Anthropic seems to be a better company. But let's talk about what you are talking about. Is he the Pied Piper leading us into ocean, right? We don't know, right? We don't know. But what is going to happen is people right now, when a company is private, it is their private business, meaning that whatever gains or losses they're making, it is their own business. But the moment you become IPO, and especially you start listing yourself into NASDAQ and NYSE, what happens intrinsically is that these companies get added to your indexes, meaning that your S&P 500, and your NASDAQ 100, NASDAQ 50, all these things, indexes, are what your 401ks rely on. So automatically what happens is every individual who has a 401k, who is bought into these funds, who are bought into these index funds, they start investing into this AA companies. So what they had found out right now, just for example, within the S&P 500 companies, these AA companies, not just SpaceX, Anthropic, OpenAI, and XAI, but if you add Microsoft, if you add the Facebooks, if you use Amazon, if you add Google, if you add all these companies, they account about 40 percentage of how much of money you're invested in 401k. So AI is becoming 40 percentage of your life. So that means that your retirement savings is going to be 40. Every dollar that is invested in this S&P 500 or any of these indexes is going to have an exposure of about 40 percentage. So we all are invested, and that means that we need to really fight for A to be successful, right? If A is successful, you are successful, your retirement is going to be so better. But again, it is what it is, right? So from private company, so when you get this expansion, you also buy into the risk. What happens if the valuation of these companies from $2.2 trillion, can it drop to less than hundreds of billions? If it drops, it's going to be a huge drop, and it's going to impact this one company, will impact the entirety of our 401k ecosystem, right? So that's what we need to start thinking about.
What habits? I think you really hit the punchline when you said about the 40%, and also the big statement about this is like NASA, Verizon, AWS, Lockheed Martin. Like it's a mixture of Facebook, everyone going together as one single company as public. Let us wait and watch, and I'm equally curious, and let us see. But this is the reality, and we are living in reality, but there are simulations that's going on all the time. So talk about the simulation, which like in the sense like in the sense IPO is all about simulation too. They are predicting the future value by putting a price right now. But what happened with if AI is gonna govern all of us like Space 2001?
Exactly. So just before, just to close out on the last topic, right? So that is a bear and a bull case, right? So bear case is that what I suggested, right? This from $2.2 trillion, it might drop to 200 billion. That means that you are wiping out almost all your wealth in 401k. What is the bull case is some of the people are saying that the token usage is going to increase. That means that the AI is going to make more money. But again, those are things that we are predicting, forecasting. I don't know how much it is true. But with that said, very good leeway into the emergence AI and emergence world, right? So there's a company called Emergence AI. They run these simulations. So what they do is they model a town, right? And they, instead of what they do is they place agents into that town and see how they behave, right? So there'll be a simple town, they'll have people, they'll have guardrails, they will create artificial money, and then they will insert agents into that one. What is special is that each of the agent will have a role persona. One will be a cop, one will be a lawyer, one will be like enforcement officer, and so on and so forth. But what they did in this experimentation is that they picked like five different models, right? So one is Claude Sonnet, another one is GPT-5 Mini, another one is Grok 4.1, and then they had Gemini 3 Flash, and then the last one they had a mixed world where they had a combination of multiple LLMs. So they took these five LLMs, each of the agents, right, each of the experimentation setup, like for experimentation one, they will all the agents will be from Claude, for example. The second model will have all the agents will be GPT-5, and so on and so forth. They'll have all these five models, and then they'll put on the rules and see how the town simulates. The experiment is supposed to run for 15 days, and then they will introduce these guardrails and then see how the crime is happening, how the town is building by itself. Are they building consensus? Are they building a stable government, or is the system collapsing? Is what they were doing. So that is the setup of it. So what happens is, like I said, everything is kept constant except for the agent, the LLMs that power these agents. Those are the only things that has changed. So now what happened is the most surprising thing, right? And most of the people will be like running in fear, because what happened is within 3 days the entire town was wiped out. The agents that was run by Grok, they literally destroyed the entire system, meaning that nobody was surviving in that one. So within the fourth day, the Grok driven world collapsed, right? They had about 183 crimes that was conducted within in just in 3 days, and this entire system, everyone died. And that doesn't mean that they have the most crime. Then there is also like in a Gemini, which is Gemini mini merchant, they had it. They had 683 crimes, and all of them lived. Right, so that's why like I'm just want to say that like you have like two spectrums of it. One is like within 3 days with just 183 crimes, the entire society collapsed. But with Gemini, even with almost four times the crime rate, right, or crime numbers occurrences, Gemini had all of them living. So that is the contrast. So let's go to like I know you also read about this one, Bala. Like, and I think this is something that you are looking forward. What is your take on this one?
It's like my simple take is it's like QA testing my software. They are going to find bugs and we are going to fix it. So if I am just going to give my first version to them so that they look busy, this was like 20 years back when we had a QA team, I will make them look busy by keeping obvious things so that in my second version, I can fix them. So I think this is what is happening right now with the models. And we all know, we all use different kind of models for different kind of things. Like I use Gemini, if I'm going to be posting on Facebook, I use ChatGPT image generation with a different prompt for LinkedIn posting. And then I use Claude for coding, and Codex, I use it for really big thinking. Even for coding, I'm running like multiple agents with multiple different style of skills and prompts, whatnot, with the different context. So not sure. I'm very curious about the setup. I'm very curious about they were using Grok fast too. So when you have instant, we all know we have to distill that information. We have distilled models for so as with any experiment, it's fun. It's a lot of good fun. We should experiment more.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think like one of the things like caveats they have also provided in their experimentation is that this is not to prove which AI or which model is better, right? It's not a ranking of AI. It just says that how the LLM models are using that learning disposition they have, right? So each LLM model is nothing but what it has learned, like just like any other humans, right? So what your learning path and my learning path and somebody else's who is a viewer who's watching it, their learning path might be different, and the decisions they make will be passed based on that learning path, the data they had used for learning. I think that's what it proves, right? So that's why it doesn't mean that one model is bad or only. The second thing is like you can start questioning the entire experimentation stuff. Like, a lot of times when you set up this experimentation, you need to set up with randomness, right? But this experiment is set up. Is it statistically a robust methodology? Probably not, because you're setting up a lot of things, and sometimes things fall in order. Even the smallest changes would impact everything. So it's not a statistically right one, and it's not a real world model, right? So you're creating a world, and so the model you are creating by itself might have some mistakes, right? So what it has proven is that the models being independent is not a sustainable idea. So that's where, I know, like, some of the AI CEOs always speak about, hey, we are close to super intelligence, we are close to, superhuman intelligence, it's going to take over the world. But what this at least gives you a clarity is that these agents cannot behave autonomously. That autonomous world is not there, because the moment you hand over these things, that they go into collapse mode, it's creating crime. Some good things has happened, right? What has happened is, they created a parliament, they created a constitution, right? Especially Claude model, which is very good, which survived for all the 15 days, right? So what it did is, created a constitution, passed proposals, it passed bills, it passed proposals. So it started functioning just like a clear government is supposed to add, right? That means that they have better guardrails. That doesn't mean that's a better model, right? So again, the point, I at least my takeaway is that we are still not close to the super intelligence, but this kind of experiments will continue to happen. But it is a good experiment to read about, and I read about it. I got crazy about this when I started reading, like, how much crimes had been committed, why they've been committed, what kind of crimes did they commit, and everything. So it's a good thing to read about it and see, what kind of experimentation you can do. Like, I like your idea, right? This is how you test your software before shipping. You do a lot of unit testing and end-to-end testing. Maybe this is another simulator testing that we need to do.
Yeah, yeah, and that reminded me of our guy Jeff Bezos invested $12 billion in Prometheus, which is he called it ASI, not the super intelligence, but AGI, AGE, artificial general engineer. So 12 billion is a lot of money in Series B.
Not
So
for him.
So a lot of good experiments out there. Let us see.
Well, let's move on to the next one, right? So next one, I think people are kind of like shocked and not shocked kind of a moment, right? So this, we talked about mythos in different setting, mythos or mythos. So this is Anthropic's like state of the art. They call it mythos class artificial intelligence models, right? Meaning that these are supposedly super intelligent, and they can do anything, right? They had been doing some experimentation. The Mythos was supposed to be released in the beginning of the year, but they stopped it, and then they re-released it, right? And then they're trying to release it. So this new one is called Fable 5. So I like the way they name it, right? So if you think about Cloud models, they have Opus and they have Sonnet. So they were going with the songs. Now they are going with Mythos and Fable 5. So just if you think that Mythos 5 is a mythological masterpiece, Fable 5 is a small fable within that mythos. So that's the way I think they were trying to do. So they released this Fable 5, which is a commercial version of the Mythos class. Like similar to, we have within Claudio, Opus, and Sonnet, you think of Mythos 5 is the next version of Opus, and then Fable 5 is a smaller version of of the Mythos. So they released that one, right? And then the moment they released it, the US government saw that they had a lot of guard. It's a risky. There are a lot of risk related to cybersecurity, meaning that you can use Mythos or a Fable 5 model to hack into multiple systems. It might cause havoc, right? And that means that we had seen instances where even the lower down models, the dumbed down models, I mean, I'm not saying the other models are dumb, but compared to Mythos and Fable 5, I've not used it. Many people have not used it, but the way they are projecting it and the benchmark test they are running, it says that they are very dangerous. They can autonomously go and hack a site. They can autonomously go and attack another country. So it becomes a security risk for any other country, not just cyber security, but also in terms of security of the country by itself. So US stepped forward, the US government stepped forward and said, hey, we have to impose a ban on Mythos 5 and Fable 5 to be sent to exported to any other countries. So that is the talk of the town. So let me let you talk about that one. I know you also are reading about this one. So what is your take on it?
My take on that is, see, when you release a model, that there are going to be bugs. So probably they found out some issues and they are fixing it right now. And instead of, they call their friend and the other friend banned it for public reasons. That's the way. That's a, I'm a very conspiracy theorist, so that's the way I say it. I think humans have already become the audit layer. They are not the detection layer anymore. We, like, this goes into the theme which I talked about the security, the top four vendors coming into play. It's a $1 trillion market, and Mythos or Fable 5 will come out. But there are three big themes apart from the security aspect. One is the sovereignty of the models. Everyone is investing in infrastructure. We know that China, France, European Union, India, of course, and US, of course. So that's the hardware part of things. And then NVIDIA was banned earlier, now Anthropic. So US is closing the gap on both the hardware and the software. So infrastructure people started solving by doing their own infrastructure. Now they need to do better models. And the third thing is that protecting your IP. There is a distill baby distill meme that's going on. So we know how people uh, start using these models to train their own. So that is also getting stopped, and there are going to be more guardrails. I'm pretty sure they did million guardrails, but they are going to put a billion guardrails right now when it comes out. That's my 3 point take.
Now, I like the way you said it. Like, and also you brought in that how Nvidia was banned previously. Right, the Nvidia is not completely banned, so their most powerful chip, the H100, was banned. Right, and then even the Blackwell technologies, that Nvidia's flagship technology, Blackwell technologies by itself has been banned. Right, but Jensen was like a very innovative, and he came up with the H22, and then that was also banned for some other reason. And then, like, no, there is still some dialogues going on between China and Nvidia and US, saying that, hey, even H20, they do not want to accept that one, right? So I think those are going back and forth on that one, right? So to your point, US is definitely on the top of the AI stack, and they are trying to put pressure on their companies to not from exporting, right? So there is a good and bad to it, right? The good thing is that this is true that these models can cause most damages. Like, the models as weapons is going to be the future, right? But actually, there is another article that I read on Politico, where, like, we are going from AI into political, right? Where that article is clearly saying that China or North Korea or any of these countries can have access to these models, or not even these models, they can build their own frontier models that can mimic what Mythos and Fable can do. Right? They are just 6 months to a year behind the US technology, right? So I don't know how much of this ban is going to be helpful. They can temporarily stop it by the time, but I think China has already started building it. I think we saw that. That's why I think, like, what you brought about Nvidia is great, right? Because when US banned H100s, right? What China is like, they went back to Huawei and they started building their latest models. The open models that they are releasing are all based on Huawei chips, right? So similarly, China would come up with another frontier model which might be equivalent or even better than Mythos and Fable 5, but they are just like 6 to a year behind. The other thing from a technology perspective, which I think is a negative thing, is that we will lose that opportunity to interact, right? Meaning that when you're holding that model from being exported to different countries, we lose that amount of data to be tested, right? So you have been talking about this, like, testing is important, security, right? How do we know if the security is working if we don't test this models against that security features, right? We need to expose it, and we need to make sure that's tested out, right? We need to create the guardrails. Maybe that's why, like, I think maybe this ban is temporary. Maybe it will run for like 6 months to a year, and then they will remove the ban, and, like, they start wanting technology across, it, I know it has already always been grown only when you share it, only when people started interacting with it. So that's my thing. But overall, right, I think this will go. This is going to continue, right? They're going to start doing geofencing, meaning that each and every model will have a geofence, and you will start creating one of the reasons, like, when we all come from the source forge era, right? And then source forge, one of the reason it died is because people started forking multiple technologies in multiple ways, and then people start losing interest, because for every new feature you'll fork into a different feature. So I think that is going to happen. We are going to bifurcate the stacks. We'll have a H100 Mythos running stack, and we'll have a open Kimi model running on some Huawei chip somewhere, right? And then both of them will communicating, meaning that we will have multiple stacks, which might be bad because we do not know which technology you are developing on, what is going to be the future. So you'll come up with the hodgepodge of things where things are moving in different directions, and sometimes we won't be able to catch up where we want to land on. So those are my concerns. But overall, I am just like you said, we are going to watch and see what is the government going to do and how is Anthropic is going to react. Just like Nvidia came with the H20, is they are going to come up with the, instead of Fable, I don't know what is a shorter version of a Fable is. They'll probably come up with the. They already have Haiku, so maybe they'll have a short story version of it. Let's wait for it. But let me ask you, any last words on, the Mythos and the Fable 5 ban.
I think the moat isn't in the model. It is on how efficiently and how effectively you are using it. We talked about token maximizing last week. So model is good, but model has to be great, but it's not the model which is going to give us the differentiating factor for our organization.
Perfect. So I think let's end with what you started with, right? Security, the Mythos and everything. It's all needs to be filled with the security framework. We need to come up with the guardrails. So, anyways, thanks for everyone. I think hopefully we are entertaining and educating you on this one. We'd like to listen to your views, listen to your comments, whether we suck or we are doing well. Let us know, right? We want to hear from you, and then if you want other topics to be covered, right? And me and Bala, we kind of talk almost every day. We go back and forth with ideas to communicate and ideas that we want to share, and sometimes we argue among ourselves to see what is the right topic to bring in, right? So, and then we bring up topics that interest both of us, but sometimes that might not be what interests you. So we'd definitely like to hear from you. Do comment, do subscribe, and then do share with your friends. Thank you all.